Ghana for for any obi biara aha Ghanatube so modofo snowy any abusian for matana say maji akonye die no ehu say ai ensem no edos ye pa eno ena mede boy say wonsom no eno eni nipa abusian for entempa no di mechie na ensem bia ewo ho ana say bia ekoso ewo manga nim no say memfa ensom di mechi.
I now have the privilege to invite His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama to give some remarks which may factor in some of the concerns that have been raised here this afternoon. Thank you very much.
First, dialogue on illegal mining. We know that the issues of illegal mining are dear to your hearts and to the hearts of every Ghanaian. And that's why we decided that from time to time we'll hold this dialogue. This is not going to be the last. We'll hold this dialogue to update you on the progress that we're making in the fight against illegal mining. Mining in Ghana has been historical, and when the first Portuguese arrived in Elmina, one of the first things we sold to them was gold, and that's why they built a fort in Elmina. Our grandfathers were involved in mining. The problem with the difference between then and now is that they use rudimentary tools to undertake the mining. And so the capacity to create destruction to the environment was very limited. The whole equation changed when the small-scale mining sector started deploying heavy earth-moving equipment. Before, it was only the big-scale mining sector that was involved in using excavators and bulldozers and huge dump trucks. At a point in time, the small-scale mining sector, which is a legal sector of our mining, it was passed in PNDC time to allow, because we realized that the big mining companies were owned by foreign companies, and Ghanaian small-scale companies that had the capacity to mine were prevented from doing so. And so the mining code was revised to add for small-scale miners. And as I said, there's a difference between small-scale mining and artisanal mining. Artisanal mining was what existed before, using pickaxes and shovels and so on and so forth. But when the new licenses for small-scale mining started, and they could afford to bring in excavators and bulldozers and others, it meant that their ability to destroy the environment was expanded. And that is where we currently have our problem. I want to assure you that we are determined to win this fight. And your contributions, your criticisms, your pressure, putting fire under our feet does not have any problem. We don't have any problem with that. You must continue to do your advocacy, to urge us on, to encourage us to win the fight. As I said in the last media encounter, I said that I had no illusions that within 7 months I was going to win the fight against Galamsey. And I said that it wasn't going to be an event, it was going to be a process. Mistakes have been made. In the first effort we made, we go into a forest reserve. We mapped out the forest reserves that had been that had incursions of illegal miners, and we deployed the first wave of our security services. They scored a lot of successes. In a short time, they had cleared some of the major forest reserves that were called no-go areas. Unfortunately, after we cleared the illegal miners from there, the security services withdrew and handed over the forest reserve to the Forestry Commission. And so they put their forest guards there. The forest guards don't have the capacity to defend the reserves against the illegal miners. And so lessons learned were that in the next wave, with the formation of NIMOS, that we must deploy, we must feed them, we must provide them with fuel, we must give them vehicles and all the logistics they need to be able to do that. And so that links up with Franklin's question about budget. We need a substantially bigger budget than we have currently to be able to win this war. Happily, budget hearings have started. The budget for next year is going to be presented to Parliament, and my expectation is that the Minister of Finance will give a much bigger allocation to this fight against Galamsey. We also need enough troops. Our troops are stretched. We have so many chieftaincy disputes all over the country, land disputes. And so you go to Sampa, we have troops there. You go to Gonjaland, Savannah, there are troops there. You go to Boko, there are troops there. You go to Nkwanta, our troops are there. And then our troops are also on the border to protect us from terrorism. And so they are spread thin. If we take another batch of them and go and put them in the forest, it means that we are committing most of our troops to other things other than crime prevention and keeping us safe. And so that's why NIMOS is a combination of the police and the army. So all of them contribute troops. And then we also have national security also contributing and all the other agencies. But happily we have some additional troops coming with the winding down of some of the peacekeeping theaters. And so when they come, as many of them as possible, we'll add them to the force so that we're able to dominate all the anti-Galamsey sites and be able to win the battle. As he said, we have targeted 7 major zones in the regions, and the army have come up with a proper strategy. NIMOS has come up with a proper strategy for engaging the illegal miners and making sure that we clear them from especially the forest reserves and the water bodies. One of the important successes is the change in the whole issue of excavators. Excavators came in huge quantities, and I remember that at a point under the previous administration, they asked that permits be gotten before excavators are imported. Meanwhile, the law did not say you should get the permit after, but that was what we came to meet, that you bring the excavator, then you go to the Ministry of Transport and ask for a permit. But the law actually says that you must get a permit before you import the excavator. And so now we're enforcing that law. And so you can't bring an excavator in, you can't put it on a ship, and we're telling the shipping agencies, if you bring an excavator for which there's no permit, we shall penalize you, the shipping agency, for carrying that excavator here to Ghana. In the meantime, we came to meet a huge quantity of excavators in the port. And that is what the lands minister was explaining to you, that we had to decongest the ports because there was no more space for anything. And so we've moved them to the military space at the Shire Hills and other locations, and we've corralled them there. One of the successes too is the registration of excavators. Even though the law requires excavators to be registered, nobody was registering their excavator. And so if you look at the DVLA records, there was no registration of excavators, and so anybody could bring in an excavator and take it straight into the forest. Today we are requiring that every excavator must be registered with the owner of the excavator known. And once that is done, like he said, we started putting trackers on the excavator so that we know exactly where they are going to. It's not only illegal miners who use excavators, contractors working on our roads, quarries and others all use excavators. And so it's impossible to just put a complete ban on excavators, but we must know where that excavator is. Now with the elephants in the room, state of emergency, you know, yes, I have the power to do it, but the president acts on the authority, not only on the authority, on the advice of the National Security Council. And as at now, this moment, the National Security Council believes that we can win the fight against Galamsey without a state of emergency. I want to assure you that the day they advise me otherwise, that boss, now we need a state of emergency, I will not hesitate in declaring a state of emergency. But we do still think that we have the powers to be able to win this fight. And as we deploy more troops and we apply more resources to the fight, I'm sure that gradually we'll begin to see that we're winning the fight. So like I said, this is not going to be a one-stop dialogue. We're going to continue to update you. We need your support. We need your criticism. We need your advocacy. We need your pressure. Continue to put our feet to the fire, because that will encourage us to also continue to work harder. And so I want to personally assure you that as president, I will also continue to put pressure on my lands ministry and all the ministries that are involved in this to make sure that we're able to hand over to our children and our grandchildren an environment that our great-grandfathers handed over to us. They gave us a beautiful country with a lot of forests and trees and beautiful rivers. We should not hand over poisoned rivers and desecrated forests to our children and our grandchildren. And so we will continue to fight. I'm sure, I believe that we'll win the fight against Galamsey. And I want to thank you for the advocacy that you continue to do. We'll hold the next dialogue. NIMOS will go to work and continue, and once we chalk more successes, we'll be able to come and update you that this is what we're doing. We want to do it transparently. We have nothing to hide. I don't gain anything from Galamsey. I am not personally involved in Galamsey, and I have no interest in it continuing. And so you can be sure that we are all on the same side, and we'll continue to do this work. I thank you very much.
Yo for yako aba uti in semno ese ode anase anya ode day and wadintre for wadintre no ewu kimi comment section no na menje boy enkinkan emofefe aha Ghanatube so ebusianfo sisiade my crown.